Welcome to Explore Your Past with Mustafa Qureshi, the show that discusses various topics to do with Turkish Cypriot history. Today, we're very fortunate to have a very special guest with us, the Special Advisor to the President of the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus on International Relations and Diplomacy, Professor Dr. Hüseyin Işıksal. Welcome, Hüseyin Bey. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you.
How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you.
Before we discuss today's topic, which will be on the 1963 conflict and the problems which arose from there up to 1974, could you first introduce yourself to the audience? Who is Hüseyin Işıksal?
Thank you, Mustafa. I was born in Famagusta in North Cyprus. Then, after completing my first degree in Cyprus at İstanbul University at the Department of International Relations, then I got a full scholarship from the British Council, Commonwealth and Foreign Office. And then with this full scholarship, I studied at University of Warwick, International Relations again. Then I got another scholarship and I studied PhD at International Relations at Middle East Technical University in Ankara. Then I back to England and I did my second PhD at University of Kiel, again in International Relations Department. I studied Turkey-European Union relations, and I wrote my thesis about how the European Union did injustices and unfairness to the Turkey on this negotiation process. So my thesis title called Asymmetric Negotiations between Turkey and European Union. Then I lectured in Turkey as a full-time, in England again as a full-time. And then I decided to turn back to my home country, to Cyprus, and to help to the young people for their education. And then I lectured in various universities at TRNC. And at the meantime, I was in the consultative team of President Eroglu presidency during that time. And then I also involved in the Maraş Committee at the foundation of the Maraş Committee. And then when our president, Mr. Tatar chosen, he offered me this position as the member of the negotiation team and to be special advisor on international relations and diplomacy. So I gladly accept this offer. And now, after all this theoretical work, now I am in the kitchen, I can say, involving directly in the Cyprus issue. So it's so nice to to represent my country. Basically, I'm responsible almost all the foreign relations, including relations with the Turkish world, Australian Turkish, Turkish communities living in abroad, and of course, negotiation team.
Okay, for the benefit of our viewers, just to get a backdrop of the Cyprus conflict, with the establishment of the Republic of Cyprus, what was the position of the native Turks on the island, both socially and politically?
Very good question, Mustafa. Thank you. Of course, in order to answer this question, we have to go a little bit earlier to understand the context of Cyprus issue. Very briefly speaking, as you know, the Turks, Ottomans ruled the island more than 350 years. And then after the First World War, United Kingdom occupied the island, annexed the island actually, in 1914. And then at the Lausanne Treaty, where modern Turkish Republic has been founded, Turkey accepted that Cyprus is under the sovereignty of United Kingdom. But when you look at the special clause of the Lausanne Treaty, which is Article 16, it says that if there is any change in the condition of Cyprus, then Turkey is one of the partners, one of the parties that would have a word. So this clause is very important. So everything happens in the history has a reason. Okay, I mean nothing come from nowhere. So that's particularly put in that article because during that time, for the Turkish foreign policy, island to be under the British control did not bear any risks or problem for Turkey, because Turkey and United Kingdom has relatively good relations. They don't have, direct clash of interest. Because for Turkey, the main threat is if only island pass to the Greek control. So that's why they put this specific clause. So then what happened? I'm summarizing quickly. There was no problem at all in terms of Cyprus, in terms of Turkish Cypriots, until 1954, because in 1954 Greece come to the United Nations with the proposal that there was a decolonization movement at that time, and Greece want to unify Cyprus, which we call Enosis. So Greece at the United Nations make this proposal that there should be referendum in Cyprus, and then the people should vote for the future of the island, and probably since the Greeks were in majority, the island will choose to annex with Greece. So it was that time where Turkey again actively started involved in Cyprus politics. So Turkey, with cooperation with the British, said that they will never accept island to be part of Greece, and then the British themselves accepted that Turkish Cypriots have exactly the same rights with the Greek Cypriots. So our number in terms of majority-minority relations doesn't matter in terms of political affairs. In politically speaking, Turks and Greeks were always the same. And when we look at the history, for example, whenever I say in this program, please, the people who are watching us, they should know that I am talking with references. I am talking with official documents. I am not exaggerating. I am not telling here my wishful thinking. I am all talking about a documented history. So if you check that time Colonial Secretary Lennox Boyd announcement in the House of Commons that he made in 1956, which later on Prime Minister Harold Macmillan also pledged this declaration. He basically said that, if you want to give self-determination right to the Greek Cypriots, then the Turkish Cypriot community, no less than the Greek Cypriot community, should be given freedom to decide for their future. So this statement itself, which is in the official documents, basically, make it clear that, the Turkish and Greeks are at the equal footing, at the equal status. So driving from this point, to answer your question, I can say that since Turkey approved Lausanne and Londra treaties, and since Turkish Cypriots' rights are guaranteed by the founding constitutions, then, of course, the first choice of Turkish people living on the island was always Taksim, which means unification with Turkey. But as the second best choice, which under these circumstances become the only choice of that time, is to give a support to a federal state that established by the Turkish and the Greek Cypriots, where both communities have have the same equal status.
That's very interesting. You mentioned Enosis, and actually the foundation of Greece was based on this idea, this megalithea, this unification of what they held to be historic Greek lands. And the late Rauf Denktaş, our first president, mentioned that there was a Cretan syndrome amongst the Turks of Cyprus, because at one time the demographics of Crete was very similar to that of Cyprus, in that there were Turkish Muslims living amongst Orthodox Greeks. And today there's not a single Turk or Muslim living there native to the island in that process of Enosis. So naturally that must have raised the fears of the native Turkish Cypriots.
Exactly, Mustafa, because as I said, nothing come from nowhere. How we are standing today, how we are standing that time, everything depends to the reason. Everything depends to the solid reasons, solid ratifications, let's say. So, as you mentioned, Ottoman Empire, the Turks, lost almost all the Aegean islands to the Greeks. And in most of the islands, there have been massive massacres. As you mentioned, in Rhodos, in Crete, in manywhere, the Turkish population had been massacred. And international community, even still today, they don't want to talk about these details, but these details are very important. So when it comes to Cyprus, we learned lessons from the past. We learned in a bad way. We learn by the painful way that unless you have a particular guarantees in any treaties, then under this megali idea and huge Greek ambitions, the Turks cannot survive in the island. So that's one of the reasons that the Turkey on the diplomatic table, for me, it was a very good treaty, very successful treaty of the 1960, establishing agreements, which give Turkey a guarantorship right, which give Turkey, to directly interfere to the Cyprus if anything goes wrong. So all these guarantees and the sui generis, in Latin word, which means unique. It doesn't look like anyone. So this sui generis establishment of the Republic of Cyprus, which doesn't look like any country in the world in terms of majority-minority relations, all this give us a confidence. All these, good gainings on the negotiation table, on the diplomatic table, is the main reason why, Turkish Cypriots approved this plan and supported the Republic.
So with the establishment of the Republic of Cyprus, the two native communities were on equal footings, had equal political rights, from what you're telling me.
Exactly. When you look at any country in the world, Mustafa, you see that, there are majority and there are minorities. And the majority always rule the minority. I mean, that's a fact. But what the Greek Cypriots couldn't understand is how come we, as a majority in terms of number, will accept Turkish Cypriots as an equal partners. So this is still at the crux of the problem, still today. But that's the case, Mustafa. I mean, the Turkish Cypriots and Turkey together, with all this hard struggle, all this honorable struggle, we achieve these rights with our hands. Like we fight for this right, and we deserve these rights, and we gain this right. So you cannot compare Cyprus with any other country. So the Republic of Cyprus of 1960, based upon equal and co-founder partnership of two communities, or two people, let's say, Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriot people, legislative, executive, judiciary organs have been separated into the two communities. I mean, nowhere in the world you can see such a things. For example, in all the government employees, 70% will be Greek, 30% will be Turkish. In the army, 40% will be Turkish, 60% will be Greek. Turks will choose the vice president, which will be Turkish. None of the Greeks can involve in the election process. And similarly, Greek Cypriots only choose Greek Cypriot president. They cannot interfere to the Turkish Cypriot politicians, Turkish Cypriot elections. In the 5 major cities like Nicosia, Famagusta, Limassol, Larnaca, and Paphos, we choose Turkish mayor and Greek mayor. So can you imagine, in New York, there's an Irish mayor, let's say Italian mayor. You cannot have such a thing. It's only for Cypriots, for Cyprus. And as I said, there's a reason for this. Because the island should be found on the balance between Greeks and Turks, and international community also supported this balance, because nobody wants a fight, nobody wants a war between Turkey and Greece. So everybody agreed upon this consensus that there should be balance between two communities. One community shouldn't rule the other. One community shouldn't force the other, for its own political will. So this balance is the essence, is the main reason standing behind the Republic of Cyprus of 1960.
It's an important point you raised there regarding the mayors for each community in each of the major cities. And many forget that prior to 1974, although the island was shared geographically by the different communities respectively, other than the sharing geography, they were very much living separate lives in very much separate from each other. So they had separate mayors, separate schools, separate temples, mosques and churches, separate cafes even. So everything was very much separated, even though they were sharing the same geography.
Mustafa, let me add you something interesting. Maybe people don't know this. Even a marriage between a Turkish Cypriot and Greek Cypriot was prohibited by the constitution. So Turks cannot marry with the Greek or vice versa. So everything was, very well separate. And even in the towns or in the cities where so-called Greeks and Turks live together, actually Turks have their own districts, Greeks have their own districts. In the villages, let's say one side of the road was Turkish, other side of the road was Greek. So actually, the two communities never mix and never live together.
A form of self-imposed segregation.
Yeah.
So the Republic was established in 1960, but the topic at hand is what happened in 1963, just 3 years after the establishment of this new state. So could you enlighten us about the events of 1963, please?
Sure. These are all very well documented facts. But the thing is, when you look at the Greek propaganda, they never talk about this period. They never talk about 63-74, which is the darkest years of the Turkish Cypriot, which is, for me, the most important part of Cyprus history. So we should talk about these things rather than marginalize it or hide it under the ground, because these are the all, living facts. We unfortunately, live this dark period, and that's why we call it dark era. So what basically happened, Mustafa, is Makarios, during that time, Archbishop Makarios, which was the president of the Republic, he said from the very first day that he is not happy from this settlement. He is not happy with London-Zurich Treaty. So what he said that for me, I just accept these treaties because I think that Republic of Cyprus is a jumping stone to Enosis. So I have to say yes, but his real motivation, his real intention was always turning Cyprus to a Greek state and always create a Enosis with the Greece. But soon we understood that Makarios' thinking was not only in the rhetoric. So he actually tried to, break up the republic, and he indeed tried to change Cyprus to a Hellenic state. So what he did, on 13th November 1963, he applied to the Supreme Court, whose president was a German, Ernst Forschkopf, and his assistant was Dr. Christian Heinze. So he applied to the Supreme Court. At the Supreme Court, you got one Turkish judge, one Greek judge, and one, let's say, other country judge, let's say a referee judge, or from an independent country. And that time, a German judge, as I said, Ernst Forschkopf, appointed to that position. So when Makarios brought these 13 amendments, what was these 13 amendments? These 13 amendments was aiming to change bi-communal character of the republic to a unitary state. So he said that let's change the election law, let's change the mayors, let's change the Turkish Cypriot president have a veto power, etc., etc. So he wants to change immutable articles of the Republic of Cyprus constitution. So naturally, Professor Forschkopf refused these changes. He said that this is against the constitution. So as the president of the Supreme Court, there is no way I can accept this, and he gave it back to Makarios. So then Makarios threatened Forschkopf and Heinze, for killing. So their life was under the threat. So they had to flee the country. But when they fled the country, both of them passed away. Mr. Heinze, rest in peace. He died comparatively recently. Both these professors, until the day they died, they supported Turkish Cypriot case. We don't have any connection with them. We didn't pay them. They have no connection with us. But till the last day of their life, they tell the truth, and they wrote that how the Makarios 13 amendments in the constitution was illegal, was against the constitution. So when it is turned back from the Supreme Court, the Makarios made the same proposal to Dr. Fazıl Küçük, to the Turkish Cypriot leader, and of course, naturally, on the same minute, Dr. Küçük, refused the amendments and give it back to Makarios.
But Dr. Küçük was the vice president, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And as a vice president, Dr. Küçük has this power to refuse, all these proposals. But what we later on noticed that Makarios was very well aware that neither the Supreme Court nor Dr. Küçük will accept these amendments. He was very well aware of this. So they make this infamous Akritas plan. Akritas plan is on the internet. I advise everyone to find and read it. In the Akritas plan, it says that, when the Turks refuse this plan, how they will attack to the Turks. And why it's called Akritas plan? Because the main hero in the text is Chef Akritas, which was Byzantine time general, and nickname of Chef Akritas was given to Yorgagis, which was the minister of interior of that time, and Yorgagis with his assistant Papadopoulos, which later on became the president, they both together make this plan and how it will be implemented. So the plan was very clear. They will attack to the Turkish villages, they will attack to the Turkish parts in the major cities, which roads will be closed, how they will attack to the Turks. And at the end of the day, they put this Akritas plan into practice on 21st December 1963, which is known as Bloody Christmas. So what happened? In few days, 500 Turkish Cypriots have been killed brutally. Then 35,000 Turkish Cypriot has to fled from their towns, has to fled from their villages, and Turkish Cypriots has been imprisoned in 39 ghettos, different ghettos. That is referring to the 3% of the island. I mean, I think this map could be seen. Mustafa, can you see the map? Yeah. I mean, this map is not proportional. Let me tell you, it's not proportional. So Turkish Cypriot area is not that big. This is just to give you an idea that how the Turkish Cypriots all around the island forced to live in the ghettos that is independent, from each other. So what happened? We should know these things. To these ghettos, there had not been any government services. So during 11 years, the Turkish Cypriot did not get electricity, Turkish Cypriot did not get water, Turkish Cypriots did not get any government services, any post services, nothing. The Turkish Cypriot employees kicked out from the government offices, so they lost their wages, they lost their incomes. Most of them become refugees. Most of them has to live, in the tents. So when you look at the UN Secretary General reports on Security Council, for example, S5950, that is written on September 64, it says that, like this is a UN report. He says that 56,000 of Turkish Cypriots only survive with the help of Kızılay and Red Crescent, of the UN help. And he says that 35,000 displaced, 25,000 unemployed, etc., etc. So you see that half of the Turkish Cypriot population only survive with the help of the Kızılay, Turkish Kızılay, and the Red Crescent. These numbers, Mustafa, are not exaggerations. These numbers are truth, So that's the reason that why Greek Cypriots don't want the world to know about these things. But as I said, these are the very well facts. And as you know that also the United Nations make the Ortega report. Ortega report that is in August 64, and he summarized, how the Turkish houses has been disrupted, how the damages have been made to the Turkish Cypriot houses. So these are all very well documented, figures where it shows that how the, Turkish Cypriots live, in the very bad conditions. And one more note, Mustafa, because I think it's very important. The Greek Cypriots make barricades at the entrance of the Turkish ghettos, okay, in order to prevent the contacts. And if you get out of these ghettos, most probably you are killed. For example, you know that there was a missing bus documentary, missing bus case, which is a bus, whole bus, that was carrying, Turkish workers to the British bases, to the British sovereign ideas. The whole bus had been lost, and only until recently, we covered that the Greeks stopped the bus, killed everyone, including the driver in the bus, and they took the bus and put the hole. I mean, they dig the whole bus. So, these things all happened. And as I said, and one of the things that really, unfortunate yet true, at the beginning of the Turkish ghettos, the Greek administration announced that there will be prohibited materials. So if you catch with any of these materials, then you are subject to die, subject to be, to be killed. So when I talk about prohibited materials, probably what comes to your mind is, I don't know, like machine guns, weapons, etc., etc. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine what are the prohibited materials? Let me give you clothing, cement, cables, dry batteries, firefighting equipment, even bags, even socks, even gloves, even boots, even woolen materials. So even plastic pipes, Mustafa. So basically, they want Turkish Cypriots to give up. They want Turkish Cypriots to not continue their basic lives. So they put all these, prohibitions. They put all these restrictions, and at the end of the day, we have these 11 dark years.
11 dark years. That's, I mean, I don't know what to say. It's really shocking to hear all this. And I'm sure the viewers are shocked as well. And I think it's important to note that the Turks were just seen as a statistical number and to weaken us for many decades, particularly from beginning in the British era, where thousands of Turks from the island emigrated to Turkey. And others who were very poor and in an unfortunate position had actually been pressured to convert to Christianity and hence become Orthodox Greek. And this is all in the reports by, we have Mufti Ziya Efendi, who was a leader of the Turkish community at the time, in his letter. And he actually detailed the number of villages which had completely become Hellenized or become Orthodox, and some of which had partially become Orthodox Christian. But from what you've told me here, it seems like the Greeks have taken it from pressure to make the Turks emigrate and to convert to outright killing the Turkish community.
Yes, Mustafa. I mean, the one of the unfortunate thing is we have the greatest diaspora community in the world. I mean, this is not an exaggeration. I mean, we calculated that Turkish Cypriots living all around the world exceeds 1 million. So, which means that only quarter of the Turkish Cypriots living on the island. I mean, you cannot find any other diaspora community who is 4 times population live, in abroad. Even the Armenian or Jewish diaspora is not that, outnumbered the people who are living in the country. So this is very unfortunate, as you say. I mean, nobody left their country for no reason. I mean, we see refugees all around the world. We see Syrian refugees, at the contemporary time. I mean, we really forced to leave our lands. We really forced to leave our country. It's not a secret that Makarios himself was economically financing the Turkish Cypriots who want to live in England or in Australia, but he was forcing them to sign a document which you sign and agree that I will take this money on the condition that I will never turn back to Cyprus. So these are all facts. They use very systematic policies. It's also they use many measures which I don't want to mention here. But at the end of the day, what's important, Mustafa, is as a Turkish Cypriots who are living on this island, who is fighting in this island, who are struggling in this island, we are just have this honorable, long-standing competition. And this is, I am not talking about decades, Mustafa. I am talking about centuries. Okay, so what we are doing is here, to keep the existence of Turkishness in the island is an holy duty, is a sacred duty. It's not just a simple Turkish Cypriot, Greek Cypriot competition. What we are fighting for is the existence of Turkishness in this island. What we are fighting for is how a so-called numerical minorities can survive against the aggressive minorities. Okay, we are providing a perfect example for the thousands of people, thousands of nations all around the world who aspire to achieve their independence, who aspire to establish a state, and which they couldn't. So we actually inspire all these people. So sometimes I feel that the young generation are not aware how big, how important, how holy, how sacred is our competition. As I'm saying, it's not only just about a simple Turkish-Greek clash. No, it's a centuries last clash. There's a clash of civilization, unfortunately. There is a identity fight, unfortunately. There's the reasons that how the Europeans try to oppress us just because we are Turks and Muslims, just because how they want to kick Turkey and Turkish out of the Eastern Mediterranean. So there's a strategic perspective, there's the identical perspective, there's a clash of civilization perspective. So when we concern about the Cyprus issue, I want everyone, please don't consider it as a simple competition between Greeks and Turkish. This is a regional competition. This is an international competition. This is a global competition.
Yeah, you mentioned that these events went on for 11 years. So what I understand from this is that the events of 1963 were not an isolated incident. So
Yeah.
how did things continue? How did things worsen for the Turks from 1963 onwards?
Yes, Mustafa. Let me again briefly summarize. After Turks kick out from the Republic, which according to Greek propaganda, they say that Turks left their positions with their own will in order to establish a terrorist, revolution or terrorist, let's say, revolt, which is completely wrong. Because again, when we look at the documents of the UN, it is very clear that the Turkish Cypriots kick out from the Republic. For example, Security Council report of July 2965, which is 6559 if I'm not wrong. In that report, it is very clearly put that the Turkish Cypriot leadership, Vice President Dr. Küçük, applied to the United Nations. And he said that, we want to back to our positions where we kick out by the Greek Cypriots, by military force. But they say, we are not trusting to Greek Cypriots naturally. So they ask for UN, help for their security. So they simply ask UN to escort them on the way to parliament. This is a written document. And then the UN Secretary General said that I will raise this issue to the head of the House of Parliament, which is Mr. Claridis of that time. Then, he raised the issue to Mr. Claridis. Mr. Claridis responded to the UN like this. He said that Turkish Cypriot members of the parliament are welcomed only if they accepted the constitution changes that taken in their absentees. Wow. What he's talking about is 13th Amendment. So how come Turkish Cypriots will back to the parliament, which unconstitutionally changed, its immutable articles had been changed, and now Turkish Cypriots are minority. These are all very well documented. It's proved that, whether Turkish Cypriots kick out from the state or they left with their own will. Then what happened? One of the turning points is there is Colonel Grivas, and when you look at the Colonel Grivas, he's a veteran fighter. He's a veteran fighter who fought at the First World War, who fought at the Second World War. So this guy knows how to fight. And there has been a military coup in Greece, and then Colonel Junta start to rule Greece in 1967. So when the colonels start to rule Cyprus in 1967, what happened is that they sent Grivas to Cyprus, and he established his paramilitary group, and he called this EOKB. And when he called this EOKB, during that time, he got 10,000 paramilitary group. This is a huge number for Cyprus, 10,000 military group. And he started to attack the Turks. And what I mean by he started to attack, he attacked with his, heavy army, like tanks, like heavy weapons. And Turkish Cypriots has to defend their villages, with the simple weapons. So most infamous one is, Geçitkale Boğaziçi attacks, where Grivas, with his full army, attacked to these two strategic villages. They killed, 38 Turkish, and unfortunately, they put fire when they achieved the villages. They put fire a grandfather, I think 8 years old grandfather, on the main avenue of the villages, to show everyone that how ruthless they are. And after this event, Turkey said enough is enough. So Turkey sent ultimatum to the island. He said that unless Grivas stop this attack, and unless Grivas with his army left the island, we will going to interfere. And what Turkey did, Turkey sent 2 jets to Cyprus. They just fly over the, Grivas forces. They just, very, make some warning fire to the Grivas army. But that fire was enough for Grivas to stop his attacks. So what happened is that Grivas, gave back the Turkish villages. Then he left the island. He dissolved his army, but only for 3 years. And at the meantime, of course, all these embargoes, isolations on the Turkish Cypriots continued. And in 1971, Grivas returned to island again, secretly, again with his army. And what happened in 1974, Mustafa, is this time Grivas army, which that time Grivas passed away, he was not surviving anymore. And Nikos Samson, the new leader of EOKB, he made a military coup against Makarios, and then he declared himself as the president of the new country. And he said that from now on, Republic of Cyprus called Hellenic Republic of Cyprus, and he basically declared unification with Greece. So under these conditions, of course, Turkey cannot be silent, because during all these 11 years, as I said, Turkey somehow stopped, by politically, militarily, by the, strong powers of international community. But at that time, enough was enough. So thanks God, Mustafa, in 5 days, this is not easy, trust me. I mean, in 5 days to decide to make a military intervention and prepare your army, it's not easy thing. So what Ecevit did, and Necmettin Erbakan, vice president, they decided to, make a military intervention to the island to save the lives of Turkish Cypriots. And thanks God that Turkish army wasn't too late, because we know that there has been very unfortunate events during the war, especially Sandallar, Murata, Atlılar villages. There has been mass massacre to the starting from 1 week babies to the 8 years old grandmothers, grandfathers. There has been huge massacres. So thanks God that Turkish army wasn't too late, and thanks God that due to the international rights, so Turkey interfered to the island, Mustafa, according to the Treaty of Alliance and Treaty of Guarantee. So it was definitely not an occupation. It was a military intervention that given Turkey under the guarantorship right. So Turkey interfered to the island, and then when Turkey interfered to the island, again, many people don't know this, Turkey controlled only 3% of the island, very, very small piece of the island. And again, we got new talk on the Geneva. And then during that time, the Turkish administration even offered the Greeks, this cantonal system. So let's say that, Turkish cantons have official status, and Greek Cypriots even didn't accept that. They say no. I mean, they lost the war. And when I say a war, Mustafa, it's a war. I mean, it's a war between Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots, Turkey involved, but also Greece involved. I mean, people not talk about this. Greece sent its elite soldiers, its elite commandos, I mean, Greece actively involved in the war. So this is a real war, not only between Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots, but also from Turkey and Greece. And in every war, Mustafa, there's a winners, there's a losers, and winners always put their, preconditions to the table. This is what happened after the First World War. This is what had happened after the Second World War. But even the Greek Cypriots were the losing side. They didn't accept any proposal, any offer from the Turkish side, like they are the winning side. But they were the loser side, and they didn't get the message. Even that time, they continue to their, attitude, that they don't want any settlement in Cyprus. The only way they accept is, a unitary state under their control. And under these conditions, Turkey has to make second intervention. And after the second intervention, we have this today's boundary where the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus control approximately 36.5 of the island. We have buffer zone, we have British foreign bases, and we got Greeks on the south and the Turks on the north. And due to this intervention, Mustafa, for the first time in history, Turkish Cypriot community achieved the chance to live together. So before that, we separated all around the island, and for the first time after 74, we get a chance to be a real nation. We got a chance to be a real state. And first we established Turkish Federated State in 1975, and then in 1983 we declared Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus.
You mentioned that Turkey came and intervened with the aim of bringing peace to the island in 1974. So from 1963 to 1974, that's 11 years of brutal oppression towards the native Turks of the island. Were there any measures by the island Turks to defend themselves?
I couldn't understand the last part, sorry, Mustafa.
So were there any attempts by the Turks of Cyprus to defend themselves?
To defend themselves, of course, Mustafa. I mean, as I said, we were under heavy, attacks of the state forces, because in the history books, it is written wrongly. For my opinion, it says that EOKA attacked to the Turkish Cypriots. No, it wasn't EOKA, because after 63, it was the Greek Cypriots were using all the state forces, all the state facilities to attack the Turkish Cypriots. So it was no longer a paramilitary group versus Turkish Cypriot. It was like a whole state power against a Turkish Cypriot who kick out from the state. So of course, under these conditions, we have to defend ourselves. So what happens is that of course, we don't have a regular armies, but we get brave hearts. We get good organizations, TRNC. And what happens is that even, for example, my father at the age of 13, he became mujahid. Like, you have to defend your own towns, you have to defend your own villages. So there was this rotation where you have to watch your village, you have to protect your village. So during that times, Mustafa, it wasn't easy, because sometimes my father's generation telling that you have no idea what we have passed through, which is true, because at the age of 13 they were defending their villages at night. They are going to school in the morning. There is no easy food. You have to prepare for your food, you have to fight for your food. There are no supermarkets or no restaurants. So I'm thinking about that time, and really I really appreciate of the struggle and honorable standing of Turkish Cypriots. I mean, even today, if the electricity cut off for 1 hour, there's a huge reactions. I couldn't enter to social media this time. I mean, can you imagine? For 11 years, this guy doesn't have electricity, doesn't have any state services, but they survived. They survived, and that's something that should be really, really appreciated.
It's important to highlight the two organizations that you mentioned, EOKA-B, led by General Grivas, and the TMT, Türk Mukavemet Teşkilatı, the Turkish Resistance Organization. And it's becoming more and more common, unfortunately, for those who perhaps don't know much about the Cyprus issue, to conflate the two organizations as being on par with each other. And how would you react to someone who says that, well, the Greeks had EOKA and the Turks had TMT?
Yes, Mustafa. I mean, again, a very good question. When you look at the Greek side propaganda, they claim that EOKA founded to fight for the British, and they never fight with the Turks. I mean, this is partly true, because indeed EOKA founded to fight with the British because they see British as the main enemy. They want to fight for the independence of the Greek Cypriots, and indeed EOKA founded to fight with the British, and one of the reasons that I cannot understand how the British still today are backing up the Greek position, how they are politically support the Greeks. Trust me, I have no idea, because only in the Turkish side we have two British cemetery in Kyrenia, and sometimes I visit there, and what I see is that there are hundreds, maybe 400, 500, even more British soldiers, and these were like young kids, aging differs from 17 to 21 to 22, had been killed by the EOKA. And these young kids, young children, at the beginning of their life, at the age of 17, they have been brutally killed by the Greeks. And when you look at the Turkish history, the Turks never killed a British. Turks never killed a British soldier. Turks never killed a British police. I mean, many Turkish Cypriots were working as a police for the, under the British police forces. So that's really one of the things that confuses me. But when we turn back to your question, yes, EOKA established to fight with the British, but after 60, the mission has been changed, because now the British gone and the new enemy are the Turks. So they fight against the Turks. So as I said, the Greeks don't want to accept that, they make this struggle against the Turks. But unfortunately, after 60, everything has been changed. After 63, it's become much more obvious, that the Turks remained as the only target. And under these conditions, under this atmosphere, of course, Turks has to be organized, and Turks have to defend themselves. And that's why TMT has been established, because we are not talking about an innocent environment. We are not talking about a peaceful environment. We are talking about a very militarily, very harsh environment where there are killings every single day. So under these conditions, of course, the Turks have no condition but establish TMT and defend themselves.
Yes, and I mean, you mentioned earlier regarding the villages which were entirely, genocided indiscriminately, regardless of the age or the gender of the individuals, based on solely that they were Turks. Murat Ağa, Sandallar, for example, but not a single village of a Greek village has been attacked in such a way by the TMT.
Yeah, I mean, this is I am sure that there will be Greek Cypriots who are watching us. So, I kindly request them to look to international sources, not only to the, Greek propaganda machines or the textbooks that read in the school. I mean, when you look at these Sandallar, Murata, Atlılar villages, I mean, the people that have been massacred were only children's, women's, and old men, because the young man was fighting on the battlefield. So these villages has been attacked because simply they don't have any protection. That's the only reason. On the places where the Turks show their resistance, we don't have many casualties, because we are fighters. It's in our blood. But as I said, on the villages which doesn't have protection, we have this massacre, which is for me it's a crime. It's a genocide. It's something that I cannot accept. I mean, on the battlefield, fighting is one thing, but attacking to the villages where only women and children are living is other thing. So these are the things that we cannot accept easily. So these are the unfortunate things. But the thing is that even today in Turkish history textbooks, I say unfortunately, we clean all this bad. We never talk about bad things. And then according to Turkish Cypriot administration, this is show our good intention. But for me, I'm not saying this to call Greeks as our enemies. I'm a part of the negotiation team, and I'm still today what we are saying that we have a good friendly relations with our Greek neighbors. This is our standing. Because island is our destiny, Mustafa. We cannot change our destiny. We cannot change our neighbors, okay? We cannot choose our neighbors as well. So we have to find ways to live together, to coexist together in this island. This island is big enough to, for both Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots. The only condition is as a Turkish Cypriots, we never claim that island is Turkish. We never claim that Greek Cypriots should, kick out. We never say that Greeks has no right to live in this island. We say just vice versa. We say that, we see Greek Cypriots as our neighbors. We see Greek Cypriots as our maybe even partners. So we have to find the way how to two distinct communities which have completely different history, religion, ethnic composition, whatever, can coexist and can live together peacefully in this island. And if you ask me the answer is so simple, Mustafa. You have to respect and recognize the differences. Okay? We don't need to be the same. And we are not the same. But, we have to find the ways to respect each other's differences and recognize each other's differences. And as you mentioned, never in history TMT attacked to the unprotected villages. Of course we fight on the battlefield, but we never attack to the civilian targets. So that's also, I think, a very significant point that we have to underline.
Hüseyin, we've coming close to the end of the program. Before we wrap up, could you just briefly tell us how you envision the future of Cyprus?
Yes, Mustafa. I mean, as you know, that when our president Tatar elected, even before the election campaign, he declared that he will put to the table two-state solution. And in Geneva, I was there as a part of the negotiation team. We put our offer on the table. It's recorded by the UN. Our Greek counterparts, saw our plan. I mean, of course, maybe it's not very easy for Greek Cypriots to accept, but our plan, Mustafa, is the only way to forward. Trust me, because all this time, since 1963, since 1968, this negotiation process continues with bearing no solution, And I'm still keeping this, Mustafa. I think you can see this, yeah?
Yes.
And this newspaper, Mustafa, dated 3rd of June 1968. 3rd of June 1968. It says that Denktash and Claridis started negotiations. They landed in Beirut, and it says that it's not clear how many days it will last. I mean, it's not clear, but more than almost 6 years passed, and still no result. So this shows us that there is something wrong on the negotiation settlement. There is something wrong in the formula. What is the formula? Bizonal bicommunal federation. But bizonal bicommunal federation cannot work in Cyprus. We have everything is so clear, because for any federation to work, Mustafa, for any federation to work, first of all, there shouldn't be any understanding of majority minority. You have to see your partner as equals. For example, when you look at the Swiss Federation or Confederation, you don't see that German-speaking people say that we are superior than the Italian-speaking or French-speaking community. So at the Greek Cypriot side, you don't have this feeling. They see themselves superior than the Turkish Cypriots. So under this mentality, a federation cannot work, because with such a big asymmetry in terms of population, in terms of economic capacity, in terms of many things, for a federation to work is impossible. That's the main reason. And as I said, the Greek mentality is not allowing us to share power and prosperity with the Turkish Cypriots. So what we offer is that a common way where both Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots can benefit together. And what we are offering, Mustafa, what we are putting on the table, okay, we are saying that, instead of risking the future of the people with complicated, court cases, people don't have no idea, where they will live, whether they will be refugees again for the fourth time, etc., etc. We put very simple, very practical, sustainable solution model. So what we say that we as a Turkish Cypriot state, you as a Hellenic state on the south, let's mutually recognize each other independence. Let's mutually recognize each other's sovereignty rights. Okay? And then when we sit on the table, let's talk about how we can build up a common framework between two equally sovereign entities. Okay? This is all we put on the table. And if Greek Cypriots one day think rationally, think with their vision, think with their goodwill, that if they want to benefit from the future, then as I said, this is the only way. Let me put some simple examples and let me finish here. If there is such a settlement with under conditions, Mustafa, the Greek Cypriot side will gain more than 50 billion euros every year, at least 50 billion, not million. For example, they will cut their military spendings. Greek Cypriots are spending millions of euros for their military spending. Why they are buying all these weapons? Why they are buying all these expensive and attacking weapons? It's not a defensive weapons, Mustafa, like attacking helicopters, attacking assassination guns, etc., etc. So they will stop this spending first of all. Secondly, the only way the Greek Cypriots can normalize their relations with Turkey is only through this agreement. And normalization of relations with Turkey, will change the destiny of the Greek Cypriots. Like they will use Turkish ports, airports, harbors, Turkish, air routes, airspace, everything. They will have a huge trade with the Turkey. They will have huge Turkish market. They will have millions of tourists coming from Turkey. So when you think about, Mustafa, rationally, that's the only way where, without fighting, without involving any kind of fight, two peoples on the island can both have more and more political and economic gains. And the Greek Cypriots will also get rid of this trauma, because all these years they are poisoning their societies, that one day we will put the Byzantine flag to Kyrenia, one day we'll put the Hellenic flag to the Famagusta. I mean, these are all dreams. With Turkish Cypriots, we never gave up, Mustafa. I just mentioned about this. We didn't even give up our darkest years, where we don't have a regular army, where we don't have any kind of organization or power. Today, Turkish Cypriot state have a huge army. We have 20-something universities. We have many five-star hotels. We have a state. So how they are expecting us to give up, all these privileges, to give up all these things that we build up with our hands, these hands built TRNC, and as I said, generations, not only us, So how they expect us to give up all this struggle, all these, rights, and turn back to the minority status? This won't happen, Mustafa. So our offer is on the table. Let's gain from hydrocarbon together. Let's establish an ad hoc committee. Let's decide how we will make money from the hydrocarbons. And the only way forward is very evident. Only from Turkey, with a small pipeline from North Cyprus to Turkey, we can make millions of it. And Greek Cypriots are aware of that. But they still say that, no, we don't want to spend, we don't want Turks to gain a penny from hydrocarbon. They have to change this mind, Mustafa. Because as I said, still today, we are not hating from Greek Cypriots. We don't see them our enemies. Of course, we won't forget our history, because if you forget your history, then you cannot have your future. But still today, our hands are still, in the air. Our offers is on the table with all the good intention. So hopefully, Mustafa, this is how I see the future. One day, a rational Greek Cypriot administration leaders, will hold this hand, this friend hand that we are, giving to the Greek Cypriot side.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Hüseyin Bey. You've enlightened us regarding the history of Cyprus and your vision for the future as well. I'm sure the viewers have benefited tremendously from this knowledge of yours. So I really appreciate and thank you for your time. And to our respected viewers, thank you for tuning in. And we'll be on your screen soon with another episode of Explore Your Past.
Thank you, Mustafa. I would like to tell my warm regards to all my brothers and sisters living abroad. As I mentioned, I was a member of you. I was like a part of diaspora community for so long. Like I live in England, I live in Turkey, so I have full sympathy to you, full understanding with you. So never gave up from your homeland, never gave up from your country, and trust us, because under our president Ersin Tatar, we are working too hard and all the best to defend our rights and continue our honorable struggle. Thank you.
Thank you so much.